Imagine this. You've been renting your home for years. You've paid rent on time, kept the place clean, and trusted that your landlord would treat you fairly. But one day, you come home from work and the locks are changed. Your belongings are sitting outside. Your landlord tells you, you didn't follow the rules, so you're out. For most people, this would be a nightmare. The place you called home suddenly isn't yours anymore. And the worst part? Many tenants believe they can't do anything about it. But here's the truth. In the United States, tenants actually have powerful rights that protect them. Rights that landlords are legally bound to follow. Rights that could save you thousands of dollars or even your home. The problem? Most renters don't know these rights. And when you don't know your rights, you can't protect yourself. In fact, according to housing surveys, nearly 70% of U.S. tenants admit they have little to no knowledge of their legal protections. That ignorance costs billions every single year. In stolen security deposits, illegal rent increases, unsafe living conditions, and wrongful evictions. So in this video, I'm going to give you the ultimate guide to tenant rights in the U.S. We're going to cover every single protection you have as a renter with real-life examples and practical steps you can take to avoid becoming a victim. Because ignoring your tenant rights isn't just a small mistake. It's something that could cost you your home, your savings, and your future. Why this matters? Let me tell you why this topic is so critical. Every year, millions of renters face issues like sudden rent hikes without notice, landlords refusing to fix heating or water problems, security deposits being stolen or unfairly withheld, tenants being thrown out illegally without a court order, families forced to live in unsafe or unhealthy conditions. And here's the kicker. Most of these situations are completely illegal. But landlords get away with them because tenants don't fight back. And tenants don't fight back because they simply don't know the law. That's why today, I'll walk you through more than 30 powerful tenant rights that every renter in the U.S. should know. Whether you're renting an apartment, a single-family home, or even a room, these rights could be the difference between losing everything and standing strong. So let's dive in. Key core tenant rights every renter must know. 1. The right to a habitable home. At the heart of U.S. housing law is one principle. Every tenant has the right to live in a safe and livable home. What does that mean in practice? It means your landlord must provide working heat, hot water, and plumbing, safe electrical wiring, a roof that doesn't leak, no rodent or insect infestations, structural safety, no collapsing floors, ceilings, or stairs. This is known as the implied warranty of habitability. Even if your lease doesn't specifically say the landlord must make repairs, the law says they have to. Back-end index pointing right example. In 2018, a family in New Jersey sued their landlord after living with no heat during winter. The court not only forced the landlord to fix the heating system, but also awarded the family financial compensation for the suffering they endured. Bottom line, if your landlord fails to provide basic living conditions, they are breaking the law. 2. The right to timely repairs. Let's say your heater breaks in the middle of January, or your toilet stops working. You call your landlord, and they say, "I'll get to it when I can." Legally, that's not acceptable. Landlords must make essential repairs within a reasonable time frame. What's reasonable? It depends on the state and the problem. But generally, heat, water, and electricity equals must be fixed immediately. Minor issues like a broken cabinet reasonable but not urgent. Example, a tenant in Chicago lived with a leaking roof for months. Rainwater damaged the furniture and walls. When the landlord refused to act, the tenant took the case to court. The judge not only ordered repairs, but also reduced the tenant's rent for the time they lived in unsafe conditions. If your landlord delays repairs, document everything. Emails, texts, photos, and you'll have a strong legal case. 3. The right to privacy, landlord entry rules. Your landlord owns the property, but once you rent it, you have the right to privacy. In most states, a landlord cannot enter your home without 24 to 48 hours written notice. A valid reason, like repairs or inspections. The only exception is emergencies like a fire, flood, or suspected gas leak. Back-end index pointing right example. A landlord in California used to show up unannounced, claiming he needed to check on things. The tenant sued for harassment and won damages. If your landlord is constantly entering without notice, you have the legal right to stop them. 4. The right against illegal eviction. One of the biggest fears tenants have is eviction. But here's the truth. A landlord cannot evict you without going through the proper court process. That means they cannot change the locks. They cannot remove your belongings. They cannot shut off your water or electricity to force you out. These tactics are called self-help evictions, and they are illegal in all 50 states. Back-end index pointing right example. In Florida, a landlord changed the locks while the tenant was at work. The tenant took the case to court and won thousands in damages. If your landlord wants to evict you, they must give written notice, file in court, and obtain a judge's order. Anything else is against the law. 5. The right to get your security deposit back. Here's a common scam. A tenant moves out, and the landlord says, "Sorry, I'm keeping your deposit for damages." But when the tenant asks what damages, there's no proof. By law, landlords must return your deposit within a set time, usually 14 to 30 days. Provide an itemized written list of any deductions. Only deduct for actual damages beyond normal wear and tear. Back-end index pointing right example. In Texas, a group of tenants sued their landlord for refusing to return deposits. The judge ordered the landlord to pay 3 times the deposit amount, plus attorney fees. Always take photos when you move in and move out. Evidence is your strongest protection. 6. The right to non-discrimination. The Fair Housing Act protects renters from discrimination. A landlord cannot deny you housing or treat you differently based on race or ethnicity, religion, gender or sexual orientation, disability, family status, like having children, national origin. Back-end index pointing right example. A landlord in Illinois refused to rent to families with children, claiming kids caused too much damage. The court found this to be illegal discrimination, and the landlord faced heavy penalties. If you believe you've been discriminated against, you can file a complaint with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD. 7. The right to a written lease agreement. Verbal agreements are dangerous. If your landlord promises something but doesn't put it in writing, you have no proof. That's why you have the right to a written lease. A written lease should include rent amount and due date, rules for repairs and maintenance, length of lease, month to month or fixed term, notice required before eviction or rent increase. Back-end index pointing right example. A tenant in Nevada was told by their landlord they could stay as long as they wanted. A few months later, they were told to leave immediately. With no written lease, the tenant had no case. Always demand a written lease. It's your safety net. 8. The right to proper rent increase notice. Can your landlord raise rent whenever they want? No. Most states require advance written notice before increasing rent, usually 30 to 60 days. And in rent-controlled cities like New York or San Francisco, landlords can only increase rent by a limited percentage each year. Back-end index pointing right example. In New York City, tenants challenged an illegal rent increase that exceeded the allowed limit. The landlord had to refund thousands of dollars. If your landlord suddenly demands higher rent without notice, you can challenge it legally. 9. The right to withhold rent for serious repairs. This one shocks many tenants. In some states, if your landlord refuses to fix something that makes your home unsafe, you can legally withhold rent until it's fixed. But here's the key. You must follow proper procedure like notifying the landlord in writing, giving them a chance to fix the issue, depositing rent into an escrow account instead of just not paying. Back-end index pointing right example. A tenant in Ohio withheld rent because of a broken furnace. The court sided with the tenant and forced the landlord to repair the heating system before collecting rent again. This is a powerful right, but only if you use it correctly. 10. The right to deduct repairs from rent. In many states, if the landlord refuses to make essential repairs, tenants can hire a professional, pay for the repair, and deduct the cost from the rent. Back-end index pointing right example. A tenant in Arizona paid for a plumber to fix a burst pipe after the landlord ignored multiple calls. The tenant deducted the cost from the next rent payment, and the court ruled in their favor. This right isn't universal. So check your state law before using it. But in the right situation, it can save you time and money.